89 years. 89 years and counting. Zimbabwe's courts lock up a monster, and he smiled the whole way through. Muri Zimbabwe tiri pano pamuzinda wevanhu kubva kuvanhu by public demand. And zvaizvozvizvi we are taking a break from the constitutional drama, the secret jets, the gold allegations, the Chiwenga's diplomatic wardrobe choices in Azerbaijan, etc. We are talking about justice. Real, tangible, documented magistrate delivered justice. The kind that actually happened in Harare courtroom yesterday. And it is both deeply satisfying and deeply disturbing at the same time. So, welcome to Zimbabwe, where nothing is ever simple. Meet Edmond Zvitsva, a name Grube will never forget. Serial rapist and suspected serial killer. Edmond Zvitsva has been sentenced to an effective 89 years in prison after pleading guilty to a series of violent crimes committed in Gurube, Zimbabwe, a rural community in Mashonaland Central. A place where people farm, raise children, attend church, and try to live their lives in peace. A community that for months lived in absolute terror because of one man who walked through the night with knives, machetes, and snare wire, targeting the most vulnerable people he could find. Zvitsva terrorized the villagers through a string of brutal attacks targeting women, children, and vulnerable residents. Among other incidents, the court heard how he dragged a 27-year-old woman from her hut and raped her near her homestead. In another attack, he strangled a man, Renias Chatora, with snare wire and left him unconscious. He also struck Brain Ngoshi on the head with a machete during a night robbery and stole cigarettes and a soft drink. A machete attack for cigarettes and a soft drink. I want you to sit with that for a moment. This man terrorized an entire rural community, dragged women from their homes in the night, strangled people with wire, and then walked away again and again and again. Of the 10 charges, 5 are attempted murder, 4 are rape, and 1 count of robbery. And this is the part that requires a deep breath. Zvitsva is still facing 14 murder charges to be tried separately at the High Court. 14 murder charges. The 89 years is just round 1. Zimbabwe, Magistrate Mapfumo delivers and does not play. Harare Regional Magistrate Francis Mapfumo ruled that all counts were committed in aggravating circumstances, stating the offenses were premeditated and he was pouncing on vulnerable victims, making well-calculated moves before attacking them. He subjected victims to shameless acts, and after raping them, he attempted to kill them. Rape dehumanized and traumatized the victims and exposed them to sexually transmitted diseases as he was not using protection. Magistrate Mapfumo did not mince words. He did not use gentle judicial language. He called the crimes what they were: shameless, calculated, dehumanizing. And then he counted out the years like a man who wanted every single number to land. The sentence breakdown: counts 1 and 2, 20 years and 7 years concurrent. Count 3, 12 years. Count 4 and 5, 7 years and 10 years concurrent. Count 6, 7 years. Count 7 and 8, 20 years and 7 years concurrent. Counts 9 and 10, 20 years and 20 years concurrent. Effective total 89 years. Given Zvitsva's age, this is a life sentence. The man is not walking out of Chukurubi. He is not returning to Gurube. He is not terrorizing anyone's mother, daughter, or neighbor ever again. And he still has 14 murder charges waiting for him at the High Court, which means the 89 years might just be the warm-up. Zimbabwe's courts, when they work, they work. Now, here is the moment that has been haunting everyone who witnessed it, and it needs to be addressed directly because it tells you something important about the psychology of predators. As Magistrate Mapfumo read out the sentence, year by year, count by count, the numbers climbing toward 89, Animal Zvitsva sat in the dock and smiled, nodded, laughed quietly, as if someone was reading him good news. Zimbabwe. This man had 89 years in prison and smiled. Now, there are multiple ways to interpret this reaction. One, he is completely disassociated from reality and the gravity of the sentence has not landed. Two, he is performing bravado because he does not want to appear broken in public. Think about that. Three, and this is the most disturbing possibility, he genuinely does not care. A man who walked through rural communities at night, strangling people with wire and raping women may simply not process consequences the way a functioning conscience would. Either way, the impact on the victims' families and legal observers in that courtroom was severe. Reports from the courtroom indicated that the community reaction to the sentence was relief, but the smiling behavior deeply unsettled those present. Victims of Zvitsva's crimes sat in that room and watched the man who terrorized them laugh as his sentence was read. There is no light way to describe that. It is traumatizing, and the state must ensure that victim support services are robust enough to help those families process what they witnessed. Justice was served. The emotional journey for the survivors is far from over. Now, pano ndo pane musoro wenyaya yese pano murezi patazosvika pana the first lady in the courtroom, the politics of presence. Vakambomutevera kuno muinterview kozvino vazotevera futi kunonzwa court case. Right. Let us talk about the elephant in the room, or rather the first lady in the courtroom. Dr. Auxilia Mnangagwa was physically present during the sentencing, and immediately, because this is Zimbabwe and nothing happens without political context, questions arose about why. The official framing is clear and not unreasonable. The First Lady has been a highly visible advocate against gender-based violence. GBV is a genuine crisis in Zimbabwe. If your presence in that courtroom sends a message to communities that the state takes these crimes seriously, that message has value. But here is the irony that Zimbabwe Twitter identified within approximately 4 minutes of the news breaking. The same week, the First Lady is in a Harare courtroom watching a serial rapist get 89 years. Her husband, somewhere between Belarus and it. But the Constitutional Court is hearing a case accusing her husband of violating his presidential oath. His Attorney General is fighting to prevent Zimbabweans from voting on the future of their own constitution. And a retired CIO officer has published an intelligence dossier about gold being moved out of the country at night. And that's who? That's retired General Lieutenant Winston Sigauke Mapranga. The husband is allegedly moving the country's gold, Mnangagwa. The wife is in court watching someone get 89 years for moving things he had no right to move. I am not drawing a direct comparison. I am simply noting that Zimbabwe contains multitudes. Right, the bigger picture. Zimbabwe's courts are handing out years like they are going out of fashion. Here is a detail that provides important national context. The Zvitsva case is not an isolated moment of judicial toughness. Zimbabwe's courts have handed out extraordinarily heavy sentences to violent criminals this year. 7 armed robbers have already received combined sentences of 785 years in prison. 3 armed robbers alone received 375 combined years, with 2 individuals in Masvingo receiving 125 years each. 4 members of an armed robbery gang received a combined 328 years. 785 years across multiple cases in 1 year. Zimbabwe's magistrates are clearly operating with a mandate to send a message to violent criminals. This country will not tolerate you. And that message on its own terms is worth celebrating. Communities in Grube that lived in fear can breathe again. A 27-year-old woman who was dragged from her hut has seen her attacker sentenced to spend the rest of his natural life behind bars. A man who was strangled with wire knows the person who did it will never have that opportunity again. Justice delivered by a magistrate who showed up, read the evidence, and counted the years without flinching. That is what the system is supposed to do. And when it does it, we say so. The bottom line, good news and unfinished business. Mure Zimbabwe. Here is where we land. Anymore, the Grube serial killer is going to prison for 89 years. He still faces 14 murder charges at the High Court. The community of Grube can begin to heal. The victims can begin to breathe. And Zimbabwe's judicial system on this specific day, in this specific courtroom, demonstrated that when the machinery works, it can deliver real, consequential justice to real vulnerable people. We hold that, we celebrate that, but we also hold the truth that Zimbabwe's courts simultaneously blocked the cameras from broadcasting the CAB 3 constitutional hearing, a case that affects every Zimbabwean's right to vote for their own president. One set of courts transparent and tough, another set of courts closed and cautious, same week, same country. Zimbabwe contains multitudes, and the Mtapa Times covers all of them. Zita is going to Chikurubi. The constitution is still being decided, and we will be here for every development on both fronts. Mure Zimbabwe, subscribe pamuzindo wevanu, Zimbabwe's most fearless and most entertaining political voice. Do you think 89 years is just served? Should the First Lady's courtroom presence be celebrated or questioned? Drop your take in the comments, smash the like button, share this everywhere, and support independent journalism through join and super thanks and stars. Zimbabwe deserves accountability in every courtroom on every issue. Thank you for watching. Peace.